Ethan Hale had been searching for a new place for weeks. His old apartment in the city had turned into a nightmare of noise. Sirens echoing through the night, neighbors shouting at all hours, and the steady, suffocating press of too many lives crammed into too little space. He wanted somewhere quiet, somewhere he could breathe, somewhere he could feel alone again. When the listing appeared online, it seemed almost too good to be true. A one-bedroom apartment in an older building on the edge of town, cheap rent, utilities included, fully furnished. The photographs showed sunlit rooms, clean hardwood floors, a cozy little kitchen, and a bedroom with wide windows that looked out over the street below. It had character, old crown molding, a fireplace that looked decorative but comforting, and a faint aura of nostalgia, like a place where time had slowed. He signed the lease without hesitation. The landlord, a pale man named Mr. Corbin, had been oddly quiet during their meeting. He handed Ethan the keys with a strangely tight smile, saying very little except, "The building has history. You'll hear things. Don't let it bother you." Ethan brushed it off. Every old building had history. That was part of the charm. The day he moved in, the halls were eerily silent. No footsteps, no sounds of televisions or conversations from behind doors. The building felt asleep. His apartment was on the third floor, at the end of a long corridor lined with faded wallpaper and flickering light bulbs. The key turned smoothly in the lock, and the door swung open to reveal exactly what the pictures had promised. But something felt off. The air carried a faint smell, like dust mixed with old perfume, something faintly sweet but sour underneath. The curtains were already drawn, and when he pulled them back, he realized the glass of the window had smudges, as though someone had pressed their forehead against it many times before. Still, it was better than his old place. That night, after unpacking only the essentials, Ethan stretched out on the bed. The mattress was firm, the sheets already in place, almost as if the apartment had been waiting for him. He drifted into a restless sleep, but around 3 in the morning, he woke. The sound was faint at first, like the rustling of fabric. Then it grew louder, the unmistakable creak of floorboards. Not in the hallway, not in the apartment above. No, inside his bedroom. His pulse quickened. He sat up in bed, squinting into the darkness. The shadows seemed to bend strangely, pooling in the corners. His eyes adjusted, and for a moment he swore he saw the outline of someone standing near the closet, still silent, watching. He blinked, and it was gone. Just a trick of his mind, he told himself. Moving was stressful. He lay back down, but he didn't sleep again. He stared at the ceiling until the first light of dawn spilled across the room. The next morning, Ethan tried to shake it off. He made coffee, opened the windows, and unpacked more of his things. As he opened the kitchen cupboards, he froze. Inside, on the highest shelf, sat a chipped ceramic mug. Not his, not left by the landlord. It looked used, faint brown stains at the rim. He pulled it down, frowning. In the sink, he spotted something else. A spoon, wet, as though it had been recently washed. His stomach tightened. He moved through the apartment carefully, opening every drawer, every cabinet, checking behind the shower curtain, even looking beneath the bed. Everything seemed empty. The closets were bare. The bathroom shelves held only dust. But the unease wouldn't leave him. That night it returned. At first, only the faint sound of breathing. Not his own. Deeper, slower, almost synchronized with him, but not quite. Then the clicking of nails or fingers against the floorboards. Ethan sat up again, his breath caught in his throat. He whispered, "Who's there?" Silence. The room felt charged, as though the very air were waiting. He could swear the mirror on the dresser shimmered slightly, as though someone had brushed past it. For hours, he sat in the dim light of his phone, watching shadows shift. He didn't sleep until exhaustion claimed him near dawn. On the third day, Ethan confronted the landlord. "Mr. Corbin, was someone living there before me?" The landlord's eyes flicked up sharply. "Why do you ask? I keep finding things. Dishes, smudges on the windows, and I hear things at night." Corbin's face went pale. He hesitated before answering. The last tenant left. Quickly. Didn't want to take their things. Happens sometimes. Ethan didn't believe him. That night, determined to prove himself wrong. He set up his phone to record while he slept. The apartment was too quiet when he laid down, but eventually his exhaustion pulled him under. The next morning, he replayed the recording. At first, nothing but the sound of his steady breathing. Minutes passed in silence. Then, faintly, the creak of the floorboards. A whisper, so soft it barely registered, like words just out of reach. But at the 30-minute mark, his blood froze. The camera caught the figure. A shape, faint in the corner of the room. Standing, watching, not moving, not leaving. And in the reflection of the window, as the dawn crept in, he saw it clearly. A woman. Her hair long, her dress pale, her face turned toward him, eyes fixed on his sleeping body. Ethan didn't move for nearly an hour after seeing the footage. He sat in silence, phone still glowing in his hand, replaying the recording again and again. Each time, the figure became more undeniable. The outline, the stillness, the way the light shifted just enough on the window pane to prove it wasn't a shadow. Someone had been there. And yet, when he searched the apartment that morning as thoroughly as he had before, under the bed, in the closets, even inside the cabinets, there was nothing. No footprints, no disturbed dust, just silence. But the mug was back in the kitchen cupboard. This time, it wasn't on the top shelf. It sat right in front of his own coffee cup, as if waiting for him to notice. Ethan's hands shook as he set it on the counter. It was clean, too clean, not a speck of dust, not a stain, as though it had just been washed. He didn't remember washing it. He didn't remember touching it all. Something inside him wanted to run, break the lease, leave everything behind and never come back. But another part of him, the part that had always hated mysteries, needed to know. He needed answers. That night, he didn't try to sleep. He sat on the couch, lights dimmed, every muscle tight, waiting. Hours ticked by. Midnight passed. The building groaned and settled, its usual creaks echoing through the pipes. And then, the sound of footsteps. Slow, bare, crossing his living room. Ethan's throat went dry. He could see nothing. No shape, no shadow, but the sound was undeniable. Boards bending, weight shifting. The sound stopped, and for a moment the silence was worse than the noise. Then came a soft, deliberate exhale, as though someone were standing right behind him. He spun around. Nothing. The apartment was empty. But in the window across the room, his reflection was not. For a heartbeat, he thought it was just his imagination. But his reflection didn't move. His body had turned, but the reflection still sat on the couch, staring forward. Slowly, it lifted its head, as though acknowledging him. The lights flickered, and then everything was normal again. Ethan stumbled into the hallway, panic clawing at him. The corridor stretched out endlessly, the dim bulbs overhead buzzing faintly. He wanted to knock on a neighbor's door, ask if anyone else had experienced strange things. But the doors all looked wrong, too old, too worn, as though no one had touched them in years. When he pressed his ear against one, he heard nothing. No voices, no televisions, no signs of life. It was as though he were the only tenant in the entire building. The next day, Ethan took action. He bought motion sensors and small cameras, scattering them across the apartment. If someone or something was in there, he would catch it. That night, exhaustion finally dragged him into a shallow sleep. At 3:12 a.m., he woke to the sound of the motion alarm. His phone vibrated violently on the nightstand, flashing an alert. Heart hammering, he pulled up the feed. The camera in the living room had triggered. The footage showed the room in shades of gray. The couch, the window, the table, and then the woman. She stepped into frame slowly, her head tilted as though listening to something Ethan couldn't hear. Her dress was old, frayed at the edges, moving gently though there was no breeze. Her face was pale, blurred as if the lens couldn't focus on her. She moved to the kitchen, stopping just in front of the cupboard. She reached up, deliberate, slow, and placed the mug on the shelf. The mug Ethan had found that morning. Ethan's breath caught as she turned toward the camera. For a fraction of a second, her face sharpened into focus. Eyes dark and hollow, a faint smile curling at her lips. Then the feed cut to static. Ethan sat frozen until the static cleared, the camera showing only the empty room once again. He didn't sleep the rest of the night. By dawn, he had made a decision. He couldn't stay here another night without answers. He stormed into Mr. Corbin's office. "You knew." Ethan's voice shook with fury. "You knew something was wrong with that place. What happened there? Who is she?" Corbin's eyes darted around nervously. His pale hands clutched the edge of the desk. "You should leave it alone," he muttered. "You signed a lease. You stay out of what doesn't concern you." "Doesn't concern me?" Ethan snapped. "She's in my apartment. She's moving my things. She won't hurt you if you ignore her," Corbin interrupted sharply. His voice trembled, but his words carried an edge of certainty. Ethan froze. "So you admit it. Someone, or something, is there." Corbin's gaze dropped. He rubbed at his temples. "It isn't someone. Not anymore." The landlord refused to explain further. He simply shoved a slip of paper across the desk, a phone number scrawled in shaky handwriting. "If you want answers, call this woman. She lived in that unit before you." Ethan left the office trembling, the paper clutched tightly in his fist. That night, back in the apartment, the silence pressed against him like a weight. He stared at the number for hours before finally dialing. The line rang once, twice, and then a woman's voice answered, hoarse and tired. "You're in 3C, aren't you?" Ethan's blood turned to ice. "How do you get out?" she whispered urgently. "Don't unpack. Don't stay another night. That apartment isn't empty. It never was. She doesn't want you there." The line went dead, and in the kitchen, Ethan heard the faint clink of porcelain. The mug, moving again. Ethan stood frozen in the darkened apartment, his phone still in hand, the woman's warning echoing in his head. "She doesn't want you there." The kitchen was quiet again, but he knew what he'd heard, the mug shifting, porcelain on wood. He forced himself to step forward, into the dim glow spilling in through the blinds. The mug was on the counter, not where he had left it, not where the woman in the video had placed it on the shelf. It sat facing him, its handle turned outward as if inviting him to pick it up. He didn't. Instead, he backed out of the kitchen, heart hammering, eyes darting to every shadow. He didn't sleep that night. He sat on the couch, lights on, every nerve strung tight, until the morning sun finally broke the suffocating stillness. By daylight, the apartment looked normal again. Ordinary, but the dread clung to Ethan like a second skin. He decided to call the woman again. The number still sat in his call log, and when he pressed redial, his pulse quickened. The phone rang and rang, until finally someone picked up. This time, she didn't whisper. "You didn't leave, did you?" Her tone was flat, almost resigned. "I need answers," Ethan said, his voice cracking. "What happened in that apartment? Who is she?" A long silence stretched across the line. Ethan thought she might hang up. Finally, she spoke. Her name was Lillian. "She lived there before me. Before Corbin even bought the building." Ethan clutched the phone tighter. "She was quiet. Lonely, I think. But the neighbors used to hear her talking at night, holding full conversations when no one else was inside. They said she had an imaginary friend, though she wasn't a child. People laughed about it. Until one day, the woman's breath hitched. Until one day, she stopped coming outside. Her windows were covered, her door always locked. No one saw her again. When they finally broke in, the place was empty. No body, no trace of her at all. Just her things in the mug. Ethan swallowed hard. His eyes flicked toward the kitchen. "They rented it out again," the woman continued. "To me, and I thought I was losing my mind. Things moved. Shadows that didn't belong to me. Reflections that lingered too long. I left after 3 months." "Why didn't you warn anyone?" Ethan demanded. Her voice cracked. "I did. No one believes you until they're living there themselves." The line clicked dead again. Ethan stared at his phone, numb. That night, he placed the mug outside the apartment door, as if rejecting it. He locked the door, checked the cameras twice, and tried to convince himself he could finally sleep. But at 2:46 a.m., his phone vibrated. Another motion alert. His heart plummeted. The feed opened to the hallway camera. The mug was back, sitting directly in front of his apartment door. But it wasn't alone. For just a second, a pale hand slid out of frame, retreating, vanishing into the dark corridor. Ethan nearly dropped his phone. He yanked the door open, but the hall was empty. Silent. The mug sat waiting at his feet. He didn't touch it. Instead, he shoved it down the hall with his foot, heart pounding. It skidded across the floor, echoing into the silence. He closed the door and bolted it, his chest heaving. But the next morning, when he staggered into the kitchen, the mug was on the counter again. Clean. Perfect. Waiting. By now, Ethan was unraveling. His thoughts twisted between rage and terror. He began scouring the apartment for hidden crawl spaces, secret passages, anything that could explain how someone might be inside with him. He tapped the walls, lifted vents, even tore up a section of the carpet. Nothing. But late that evening, he found something behind the bathroom mirror. It wasn't obvious at first. The glass was slightly warped, the edges loose. When he pried it away, he revealed a hollow space inside the wall. Inside, there was a tape recorder, an old, dust-covered machine, still plugged into the wiring inside the wall. Next to it sat a small box of cassette tapes, labeled only with dates. Ethan's skin crawled. His shaking fingers placed one tape into the machine. Static filled the bathroom, broken by faint sounds. Breathing. The rustle of fabric. And then, a voice. His voice. It was a recording of him, muttering in his sleep, moving around, talking on the phone. Hours of his life captured without his knowledge. Ethan yanked the tape out, his breath ragged. He shoved the mirror back into place, but it no longer fit cleanly. The glass tilted, showing his reflection at a strange, broken angle. His reflection smiled. Ethan stumbled back, his pulse racing. The reflection's lips curved into a grin that his own face did not mimic. And then it whispered, though no sound escaped his own mouth, "Don't move my things." The lights flickered. The bathroom door slammed shut behind him. Ethan clawed at the handle, finally wrenching it open and stumbling into the living room. The apartment was suffocating now, the air thick with a presence he could no longer deny. The mug sat on the table, right where he had left it, except now it was full, not with coffee, not with tea, but with water rippling faintly, as though someone had just dipped their finger into it. Ethan's knees buckled. For the first time, he realized this wasn't about the mug, or the tapes, or even the woman named Lillian. This thing, whatever it was aware of him, watching him, learning him, and it wasn't going to let him leave. Ethan didn't go to work the next morning. He didn't eat. He sat on the couch, eyes fixed on the mug still perched on a coffee table. The water inside had gone still, but he couldn't shake the image of ripples spreading across its surface, as though unseen fingers stirred it. His phone buzzed. Another motion alert. He opened the feed with dread clawing his chest. The hallway camera showed a man standing in the corridor. Ethan's breath hitched. The figure was tall, blurred by the grainy resolution, but its face was wrong. Not hidden, not masked, just wrong. Too long, too pale, as though stretched into something vaguely human but not meant to be seen. The figure didn't move. It simply stood outside Ethan's door, staring into the lens. And then, slowly, it lifted its hand. In its fingers was the mug. Ethan's stomach lurched. He looked at the table in front of him. The mug was still there, still full, still rippling. When he looked back at the screen, the figure was gone. That was the moment Ethan broke. He grabbed his keys, his jacket, and bolted from the apartment, barely locking the door behind him. He raced down the stairs, past the rows of silent, closed apartment doors out onto the street. The morning air slapped him awake. For the first time in days, he felt a taste of freedom. But even as he drove away, he couldn't shake the thought that he hadn't left alone. That night, he stayed at a hotel. Neutral walls, clean sheets, the hum of a working TV, comforting in their normality. For the first time, he thought he might actually sleep, until the knock came. 3 sharp raps at his door. Ethan sat up in bed, heart racing. He told himself it was just housekeeping, a mistake, someone in the wrong room. But when he peered through the peephole, the hallway was empty. He backed away, sat on the bed, tried to calm down, and then he noticed the mug on the dresser. The same chipped porcelain, handle facing outward. Waiting. Ethan couldn't breathe. He hadn't brought it. He hadn't touched it. Yet here it was as though it had followed him. The water inside rippled again. He ran, out of the hotel, into the night, gripping his phone like a lifeline. He called the only person he could think of, the woman who had lived in the apartment before him. To his surprise, she answered. "You left, didn't you?" she whispered. "Yes." Ethan panted, pacing on the sidewalk. "But it followed me." "The mug." "You can't run," she interrupted. "Don't you understand? It's not the apartment. It's her. Once you live there, once you touch her things, she knows you. You belong to her now." Ethan staggered. "What does she want?" The line went silent for a moment. Then the woman spoke, voice trembling. "She wants company." The phone went dead. Ethan felt the night air thicken around him. The street seemed deserted, the lamps flickering faintly. He turned and nearly dropped his phone. At the far end of the street, a figure stood beneath the light. Tall, pale, holding something in its hand. The mug. Ethan stumbled backward, pulse roaring in his ears. He ran. He didn't know where, just away. But no matter how far he went, no matter how many streets he crossed, he felt it behind him. Not chasing, just watching, always waiting. By dawn, exhausted, he found himself back in front of the apartment building. His own footsteps had betrayed him, circling him back to where it all began. The door was unlocked. Inside, the air smelled faintly of coffee and dust. The apartment greeted him with stillness, as if it had been expecting his return. The mug sat on the counter again, and next to it, a second mug. Identical. Waiting. Ethan's chest tightened. His hands trembled as he picked it up. The porcelain was ice cold, heavier than it should have been. From the corner of his eye, he saw movement in the mirror above the sink. His reflection wasn't alone. A woman stood behind him. Her face was pale, hollowed, her hair falling in tangles around her shoulders. Her eyes met his through the glass, and she smiled. "Now," she whispered, her voice echoing through the apartment, though her lips barely moved. "You can stay." The lights flickered once, twice, then died. In the darkness, Ethan heard the clink of porcelain. Two mugs side by side filled at last. The morning after, Ethan didn't know if he had actually slept or merely blacked out from exhaustion. When his eyes opened, the apartment was unnervingly quiet. No traffic outside, no footsteps above, only the faint ticking of a clock he didn't own. The mugs were still on the counter. Two of them now, both filled with water that never seemed to evaporate. He hadn't touched them since last night, but they were always there, waiting. Ethan tried not to look at them as he made his way to the front door. His mind screamed at him to leave, to run until he was so far away this place couldn't reach him. But when he pulled the door open, his stomach dropped. The hallway wasn't there. Instead, a wall of cracked plaster and faded wallpaper stretched endlessly where the hall should be, like the building itself had folded in on him overnight. He stepped back, slammed the door shut, then opened it again. Same wall. The apartment had sealed him inside. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Another alert. The hallway camera, except there was no hallway anymore. Hesitant, he opened the feed. The camera was still working, showing the corridor as it had been before. And in that corridor, a figure moved. Slowly, deliberately, pacing back and forth, as though waiting for the right moment to knock. Ethan felt the breath drain from his lungs. It wasn't just the apartment that was wrong. Reality itself was splitting, two different versions existing at once, and he was stuck between them. He backed away until he reached the living room. His reflection in the TV screen caught his eye. He froze. There was someone behind him. He spun. The apartment was empty. But in the dark screen, she was there again, the woman with hollow eyes and a smile too sharp to belong on a human face. She was closer this time, standing almost at his shoulder. And then, for the first time, she spoke clearly. "You should drink." Ethan staggered, shaking his head violently. No, I don't want." The lights flickered overhead. The mugs rattled against the counter, water sloshing inside them without spilling. "You don't have a choice," she whispered. Ethan grabbed his jacket and rushed to the windows. He tugged at the blinds, yanked them open. His stomach turned to stone. There was nothing outside, not the city skyline, not the street. Only blackness, like the building floated in a void. The apartment wasn't part of the world anymore. It had been taken somewhere else. The clock ticked louder. The sound gnawed at his nerves, its rhythm syncing with the pounding of his heart. He had one thought left, one desperate act of defiance. He picked up the mug and hurled it across the room. It never hit the floor. Instead, it froze midair, suspended. The water inside rippled once. Then the mug slid back, impossibly across space until it returned to its place on the counter. Waiting, Ethan collapsed against the wall, clutching his head. He couldn't fight this. He couldn't escape. And then he heard it. Typing. Faint, steady, rhythmic. The sound came from the bedroom. His skin crawled as he followed it, each step heavier than the last. On the desk sat an old typewriter. He'd never seen it before. Its keys moved on their own, clacking loudly now as letters formed across the paper. He leaned closer. The page read. He drank. Now it's your turn. The typewriter fell silent. Ethan stumbled back, bile rising in his throat. The apartment wasn't just haunted, it was writing his fate. The clock ticked louder. The lights dimmed. His reflection in the window twisted, showing not his own face but hers. Smiling, waiting, and then, from the kitchen, came the softest sound of all. The clink of porcelain. One of the mugs was empty. Ethan's throat tightened as he stared at the half-empty mug. His hands shook violently. He hadn't touched it. He knew he hadn't. But someone had. Or something. The ticking of the unseen clock grew louder, filling the apartment until it was unbearable. He pressed his palms against his ears, but the sound came from inside his head now, matching his heartbeat, syncing with it. He stumbled to the door again. The plaster wall still blocked the hallway. No escape. He spun toward the windows. Nothing but blackness beyond, as if the world had been erased. The typewriter in the bedroom clacked again. Slowly, deliberately, he forced himself to look. New words bled across the page, each keystroke loud as a gunshot. One drink. One life. One resident. Ethan's chest seized. His pulse thundered in his ears. The apartment wasn't haunted. It wasn't cursed. It was alive, and it was choosing. The lights flickered, plunging the room into alternating flashes of brightness and shadow. In every stutter of darkness, Ethan saw her, standing closer. Pale, hollow-eyed, smiling as if she already knew the ending. The mugs rattled violently now, sliding across the counter, water trembling inside them like it was alive too. Ethan whispered to himself, "Don't drink. Don't drink. Don't give it what it wants." The walls pulsed as if they were breathing. The apartment groaned deep in its bones, a sound like shifting earth. The typewriter clattered again. He drank. Now it's your turn. He couldn't breathe. His vision blurred. His body moved without permission, dragging him toward the kitchen, toward the mugs. He fought it, clawing at the door frame, leaving splinters in his hands. "I won't. You can't make me." But the woman was there now. Not in the reflection. Not behind him. She stood in the kitchen, holding one of the mugs with both hands, offering it to him. Her smile widened until it split her face. "You already did," she whispered. Ethan froze. His stomach turned icy. He looked down at his hands. Water dripped from his fingers. His lips tasted faintly metallic, bitter. The mug in her hand was empty. He had drunk it without knowing. The clock stopped. Silence filled the apartment like a tomb. Then, slowly, the walls began to change. The wallpaper peeled back, revealing layers beneath. Names scrawled over every surface, dozens, hundreds, maybe thousands. Each one written by someone before him. Each one crossed out, until only one name remained unmarked. His. Ethan's vision blurred, and his body went numb. His reflection in the window solidified. It wasn't him anymore. It was her, smiling through his eyes, standing in his body. And in the next heartbeat, Ethan understood. He wasn't a tenant. He was the next replacement. The apartment only ever had room for one. And now Ethan was gone. The lights steadied. The mugs vanished. The typewriter fell silent. The apartment was ready, waiting patiently for the next renter to arrive.